Hello, my name is Marvin Heemeyer. Today is, let's see here, April 13th, 2004. I am making this tape. I thought I should make it a year ago. Made part of it. Didn't like it. Really didn't think it'd make any difference if I did make it, but a good friend of mine said I should make it. He said I should sit down in front of a videotape machine and do it, but you're just going to have to take my word that this is Marvin Heemeyer, serial number 503-689-471. And I'm living in Grand Lake, Colorado. And this tape is about my life since I come up here to Grand Lake in 1991. I moved up here in the fall of 1991 to kind of take a 6-month vacation. Had a guy and his wife who were leasing my muffler shop in Boulder at 4790 Pearl Street. The guy's name was Doug Brandstetter with his wife. I forget her name right now, but anyway, they were just on a probationary period. This guy had serious alcohol and drug abuse problems in the past. Supposedly was cleaned up. I didn't know if he was or not, but he kept pestering me for jobs. Finally, I said he could lease the place. Anyway, he ran it for 4.5 years, and everything went to hell. I guess he got a divorce, and different things happened. I ended up getting it back, and then I let another guy come along. I was working down there, working up in Granby, actually, at the muffler shop I had in Granby, and in Boulder. Had 2 different people working for me. One in Boulder, her name was Christy. She was from someplace up in South Dakota. Great worker, wonderful person. I really appreciated her. And then a little girl up here, Dawn, or Gretchen Allison was her name. And anyway, so I was running both businesses, and this other guy came along named Doug Davis. He worked at Midas for about 9 years as a manager, and he wanted to be a working manager, and so he took over the place, and I gave him a little better deal than the other Doug Brandstetter had, because the first Doug seemed to have a lot of problems making his payments last year or so, but we had, I believe they were for one reason, and he would never admit it though. That's the same way that this Doug Davis, he finally left. He left here about a month ago. I got the place back. The landlord evicted him, old Harold Pelly down there evicted him. And anyway, I took it back, and hopefully I got it sold to a real nice guy and his wife, Jeff Sterling, and his wife Jennifer. They should be taking over the 1st of May. 1st of May. Anyway, so I've cashed out of it finally, and I'm done with it. And anyway, I moved up here. That's my history in Boulder. This is my history up here. I came up here, and after a few months of living here, I realized this guy down there in Boulder was doing better than I ever thought he would. So it was all based on, he kept it based on whether he performed or not. Of course, he was making all kinds of money, so I was happy, he was happy, and I realized he was going to keep it. So it came springtime, it's probably April, I'm thinking. I decided that, I probably ought to buy some property up here to have something to do, so I looked at this 3 lots and the 2 little cabins that I'm living in here right now, and had a beautiful view, and the price was really cheap, so I bought them. And figured I'd spend the next year until this Doug guy, folded, because I didn't know how long it would last. I figured I'd just fix this house up, these cabins up. Well, then a friend of mine from Boulder, a friend, he was a friend to a point, I guess you'd call him a friend. We did a lot of snowmobiling together. He met me through the muffler shop down there. He had a DJ's Auto Care down there, or Dr. John's Auto Care, and I did a lot of exhaust work for him, and he was a snowmobiler. So we started snowmobiling together. Without a doubt, I knew he had some problems with dope, as far as marijuana and drugs were concerned. I just didn't know how bad it was. And, you got to just kind of ignore that stuff in today's day and age. You go out there and you find somebody who's a good rider, you ride with them, and we had a lot of fun together. Anyway, he called me and said he was looking for place up here to start a garage. And he already owned a cabin up here, up there off County Road 4. And I said I'd take a look, see if I could find anything. So I started looking, and there was a guy named Pepper had a little garage down there south of Grand Lake, just north of the Ski-Doo dealership that had a bay door on it, and he didn't want anything big, so I told him about that, and then I happened to cross a piece of property down there in Granby. It was an old concrete plant, and the guy had gone bankrupt and had an auction and, gotten rid of all his stuff he had and left about a bunch of junk there. It's my understanding. And but it had a 3,000 square foot building with 3 bay doors that were huge. I mean, it was a great building. It wasn't the best location, but it was a good building, and had 2 acres of ground. And I talked to him about it, and he said that'd be great. I think he even came up and looked at it. I can't remember. But anyway, he said that he was interested. So we talked to a realtor named Jeff Crane, or I talked to him, I should say. And this was about a month before they were going to have this FDIC auction. So Jeff says that he'd sell me the property. We could write up a contract on it if I wanted it, but he figured it was worth about $110,000 or so, or more, and I kind of laughed, and I said, there's no way it's worth that. I mean, property up here was just so depressed in 1991 and 92, it was terrible. And I didn't foresee any kind of future up here. I mean, I hadn't ever lived in the mountains before. It just didn't seem like the good thing to be buying, at that kind of a price. So I told him, I said I'd wait until the FDIC had their auction. And I and John talked it over, and we agreed that, I'd pay $66,000 for it at the max. And if it went higher than that, we wouldn't buy it. He didn't want it. So the time came, and then he'd pay me a certain amount. I can't remember if he was going to pay me more than $66,000 for buying it for him, or if I was just going to finance it to him. I know I was going to finance it to him, but I don't know if it was $66,000 or if there was going to be more. Anyway, it doesn't make any difference. Come time for the auction, Jeff Crane was down there with 4 older guys who were looking to invest some money in some FDIC properties, and I think there was about 160 properties for sale that day. And anyway, this one finally came up for bid, and first they told me that there was a EPA audit against the place, which was they were recommending a $20,000 cleanup. They had all these surveys done by Chen Northern, was the company contracted to look at it. But anyway, come to find out later on that FDIC had done a lot of the cleanup that they had recommended, and I don't know, for some reason I didn't realize that. So I told John about it, or it came up for sale, came up on the block, and they had a bid for $35,000 from some guy up in front. And so we were going to pay $66,000. I was waving at them. They couldn't see me. So finally they caught my bid. So I got a bid for $40,000, and this other guy, I couldn't believe it. I didn't know who he was. He jumped up on his chair. That's how I knew where he was. And I was looking back, and of course he bid $45,000, and of course I bid $50,000, and was waiting for him to bid, and he wouldn't bid. So I got the property for $50,000. And this guy, come to find out, his name was Cody. He came back there and introduced himself to me about the rudest, most arrogant person. I mean, this guy's just a fucking asshole. Come back and just introduced himself kind of by just giving me a tongue lashing for about 10 minutes about, who I thought I was and what I was going to do with the property. And I explained to him I was buying it for John Kleiner, and he said he wanted the property. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I'll sell you the property. I says, we were going to pay $66,000. And, I told him I was selling it to John Kleiner, who was going to start an automotive store there. And he didn't want to have anything to do with it. He said, bullshit. He says, I only got, Gus Harris was his buddy there sitting beside him, I guess. And Gus was sponsoring the whole financing on this thing. And Gus wasn't going to pay more than 50 grand for it. And I says, well, I'm sorry, but I says, I can't just not come down here and spend my money and waste my time and not, make some money on it. So I offered it to him that day for what I was going to sell it to John for, because I could tell the guy was pissed off, and I wasn't there to piss off any people. I mean, this is the only guy of all the properties that sold before his that was doing any screaming at anybody during the auction. I mean, 160 properties were sold that day, and this is the only fool that didn't come down there with enough money to buy his property. I mean, this shows you how day late and a dollar short this fool is. He thinks he's going to go down there. I mean, he screwed the whole town of Granby over the years by going bankrupt. And, I guess this guy's pretty dramatic. He faked a suicide jumping off a windmill or some tall building out there by his place by Hot Sulphur Springs. Anyway, he's going off on me and wasn't going to pay any more money. And I said, well, I'm sorry, I got to have $66,000, and I'll let John go find something else. I'm just trying to be a peacemaker here, but I got to make some money. He wouldn't have anything to do with it. So, I calmed him down. I mean, I talked to this guy forever, it seemed like. Everybody around me, they couldn't believe this asshole. And anyway, so we closed the deal. He left. He went away. And I went and had Jeff Crane sign the broker statement that I was purchasing this property. And as a matter of fact, going back here a little bit, when I had first looked at the property and Jeff had tried to sell it to me, I had asked him if the former owner was interested in purchasing the property at this FDIC auction. And he said he didn't know. Well, then I called the FDIC to look at it, because there was a number to call, and they called an agent there in Granby, a real estate agent named Peter Colley. So Peter went out and bought a padlock, and I went down there with a cutting torch, and we cut the lock that was on the building off so I could look at it. And then, of course, he put his new padlock on. And he showed me the building, and it looked like it'd be a good building. So anyway, I asked this Peter Colley also if the former owner if he knew if the former owner had any interest in buying the building. And of course, he told me he didn't know. So, okay, well, I feel that my job is done. I'm going to go to the auction. So we did, and I ended up buying it. We closed on the deal, and, I came back up to Grand Lake and got a hold of John Kleiner and told him that what had happened. And this is, like I say, it was in about April of '92. And explained to him that there was an EPA audit against the property because there were some oil stains on the property, and there had been an oil fill barrel. And, I don't know if it was that day or a couple of weeks later, whenever, he just didn't want anything to do with the property all of a sudden. And, of course, I hadn't taken a deposit from him, so, I was stuck with the property. But he didn't want anything to do with it because of the audit, And, of course, he was from Boulder, and they'd been pretty, Boulder's pretty, what do you want to call it, eco-Nazi type. They think they're going to save the world. And, that was his fear, is one of the things was that then there were a lot of regulations about dumping oil and all that stuff. So he didn't want anything to do with it all of a sudden. Well, I don't know if he didn't have the money or just got cold feet or what, but I'm stuck with this property, so heck, I don't know what to do with it. So that summer, I'm pretty sure it was that summer, I tried cleaning the property up. Might have been even '92. I think I may have just let it sit there. I know I let it sit there for a while because I didn't have any equipment or anything to clean it up. But anyway, eventually I did buy a backhoe, and I bought a dump truck from my dad, beat truck, and started cleaning the property up and hauling the steel away. Hauled it over to Geisendorfer's property. He had a guy that was cutting up steel over there and selling steel, and this kid wanted it, so we just hauled everything over there. And basically got the place cleaned up pretty nice. Rented a bulldozer, a little D3 from Linky. What's his name? Dick Linky, south of Granby there. Pretty good, real good guy. And he delivered it over there, and I leveled out the ground and the stuff, tried to make it look pretty presentable, and I didn't know what to do with it. Shoot, the guy in Boulder was doing great, so finally I decided that I'd start a muffler shop, and I think I started that either late 92 or late 93. I don't remember anymore. But, I just started putting on mufflers. I went down to Denver and found a used vendor and brought a used hoist up that I had down there in Boulder and set it up and started putting on mufflers and advertising and everything. And, figured I was going to do a good thing. This was maybe an opportunity for me. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. In 92, I was cleaning the property up. Yeah, that's the way it went. Because in the summer of 92, after I bought it, guy named Bud Wilson, who is the superintendent of the Water and Sanitation District down there in Granby, came to me and said that they wanted me to hook on to be annexed into the Water and Sanitation District. So I said, great. I says, what do I have to do? I says, is there have to get an attorney involved or what? He said, no. He said he'd do all the paperwork, and there was some kind of fee, I think, that I had to pay, but I don't remember anymore. But anyway, I was supposed to go to a meeting in September, I believe it was, and get annexed into the Water and Sand. And so we did. I went to the meeting, and I just expected it to go through. And it was unbelievable what happened to that meeting. The main topic of concern that they had with me being annexed into the district was that they didn't have a maintenance easement across the property that was just south of me. It was owned by Gus Harris, and they had put in a water and sewer line years before, but it supposedly hadn't gotten this maintenance easement. And Gus Harris wasn't going to give it to him or something. I'm not really sure how that all worked, but this maintenance easement was a pretty big obstacle. And they basically told me, the board did, in the fall of 92, that I would never have water and sewer there until I got this maintenance easement from this Gus Harris guy. Well, I was a little upset because, he was Bud was a superintendent, and this was I thought this was a done deal. So, I left the meeting, and I didn't need to listen to any more of their crap. They wasted a lot of my time. And, I knew that there was some animosity in the community. I had been getting my hair cut down at this place called Lana's, and she had told me about how this Cody Dochef guy had tried to kill himself and had screwed a lot of people in the community, and had gone bankrupt, and he was they were kind of glad that he wasn't there anymore, that he was outside of town. He had moved up into Dick Thompson's gravel pit north of where that location was, about a mile, and was doing making concrete out of there again. But anyway, what the heck was my point? This Lana she told me how upset everybody in the community was that at the FDIC, because what had happened was they had that big savings and loan failure scandal back in the late 70s, early 80s. And everybody blamed the FDIC for this plant's failure and other people's problems that they'd had up there, because what had happened is these people, with the savings and loans failed, these people that owned property and stuff up there didn't have any place to make payments. So what they did, they didn't know what to do, so instead of putting the money aside every month, supposedly they went out and spent the money. Well, then after a couple of years or whatever it took to straighten those deals, that savings and loan thing out, FDIC wanted their money all at once from these people that hadn't made these payments to these collapsed savings and loans places. And these people didn't have the money. And so the FDIC, of course, was foreclosing on these properties. So everybody up there hated the FDIC. Didn't like their practices. And of course, here I am. I'm a beneficiary of the FDIC's actions, and so And I found this out later, people are pretty angry with me, They didn't know how to play by the rules. I played within the parameters of what was supposed to be done. There were 160 properties sold that day, and I bought it just like everybody else bought their property. And, there's no reason why didn't this guy have enough money to buy this property? I mean, it was an auction. He should have known that there was going to be people bidding against him, but I honestly believe he thought he was going to get it for next to nothing. And I believe that because I think the word was out in the community that he wanted it. And personally, I think the two realtors that showed it to me knew this, and they just didn't want the guy in the community, so they told me that they didn't know that he was bidding on it or that he wanted it. Because had I known that, I would have talked to him. I would have called him and found out what the deal was. But anyway, I'm a little disappointed. And one thing they told me was to stay in touch with the superintendent in case anything changed. Well, it says, of course I'll do that, but that was kind of a mistake on my part, because it shouldn't have been my responsibility to keep track of the superintendent, which I did. Because, I took this Bud Wilson out for breakfast on more than one occasion. He spent a lot of time out there at my shop. I sold him a Woos, W-U-S, four-wheel drive, little dump garden tractor. And, I got along, and this guy was a pretty good guy. At least that's the way he came across to me. So we had a pretty good relationship, and he never ever mentioned anything to me that anything was changing. He says it would, but it never did. Well, anyway, so I just go on about my business, and finally, I think it was in '94, nothing was happening. Bud wasn't telling me anything was changing or anything, so I went ahead and I said, well, I'm going to build me a boat storage building, and I'll design it so that I've got 3 2,000 square foot units, and it was 50 feet wide by 120 feet long, and that we had 3 bay doors, and I was to put in 3 personnel doors, and I set the foundation up to have these 3 bay doors and 3 personnel doors, so that I could put inner walls in or divider walls in later on when I finally got on the water and sewer. So I could have it for rental, and this would become my, a good retirement income. I could rent the muffler shop building or sell the muffler shop business. I could subdivide the property because it was in the city already and fell under their subdivision rules. It was pretty much just a pre-approved thing. You just had to apply to the town and pay them the fees and, follow the rules for what was HGB zoning. And HGB zoning, of course, was the best zoning you could possibly get. It included everything that was in commercial, plus other things that wasn't. And there was no other zoning that would include more businesses than HGB. So anyway, I thought this was a good plan, and I had this building built, and in the fall of '94, just started advertising for boat storage. And, of course, filled it up the very first year. And was pretty happy with that. So, basically, it was paying the cost of the building. Well, we just go along. I'm making lemons out of lemonade, or lemonade out of lemons, I can't get this darn water and sewer going, So, I had a well and a septic system, which was doing its job. And I figured that, that'll work, Well, of course, and knowing that I couldn't put the other building on a well and sewer because I was in town, or well and septic because I was in town, I was going to have to hook onto the water and sewer, but not being able to do that because I didn't have this maintenance easement. And Bud never told the thing to me yet. I'm building this building, telling him what I'm going to do. He knew what was going on, but he never told me that anything had ever changed. So I continue and do the boat storage, and I'm doing muffler works and so forth. By '98, I was doing, I was making a real good income out of there, along with what was coming out of Boulder. Actually, I'd gotten it back in '97, of course, as I said. and then I gave it to this other Doug Davis guy. But I was, I had income out of Boulder, and I had income out of Granby here, and life was pretty good. And I was taking a lot of time off because you don't have to maintain rentals with boat storage. There wasn't that much muffler business up here. I mean, I was only working 3 days a week in the wintertime there, 5 days a week in the summer, which was typical of any store I ever worked in. As far as the summer was concerned, I never had any store ever open more than 5 days a week unless I'd just open one up. Then I might work a Saturday to make sure that all the revenue was coming in. Anyway, I just was going along happy, and in '98, I believe it was, in the fall, this Dochev guy, going way back to '92, without a doubt, I made a mistake. Gus Harris, a couple of months after I bought this property, this guy named Gus Harris, who owned the property south of me, was over there doing some cutting on some steel, and I went over to, meet him and see once if he was cooled down, because I know that he was upset that they didn't get this property, and he was. I mean, actually, I'd had a couple of conversations before that time, and he was willing to sell me the property then for $17,500, and I basically told him, this was 2 months after I bought it, that I didn't buy that property for myself that was there. I bought it for somebody else, and he was not wanting to buy it, though John did want to buy it. So I didn't want to spread myself too thin because the economy was so bad up here. I told him, I said, I'll think about it, and I'd get back to him. Well, the truth of the matter is about a year later, less than a year later, I went to him and I said, I'd like to buy that property. And I said, is that $17,000 offer still good? And he says, no. He says, I'd have to have $20,000 for it. And I talked to his wife about this too, about getting these contracts signed so I could buy it. And he never would get back to me as far as getting this deal done. So, I'm still not wanting to push this deal because this is a small community, and, I need to fit in, and I'm not, pressured. This is not one of those things I felt that you needed to do in a community where I'm new in. Anyway, getting back to '98 now, earlier in '96 or '97, Gus Harris had sold this 2 acres to this guy, Cody Dochev. And of course, Cody had made a comment that, he wanted my property back in '97 it was. And I had gone out and had a guy make an appraisal. Wilson was his name. It was Doudna, who was the local appraiser here at Grand Lake still. And it was Doudna and Wilson and Doudna commercial appraisers. And this guy named Wilson had made up an appraisal on my property in 1997 and came up with a value of $270,000. And I had offered this property to Cody for $250,000. I says, Cody, I'll walk away from my business. I'll get everything out of here. You buy this place, and for $250,000, which was less than the appraisal, and you're happy, I'm happy. And Cody never would. I gave him a copy of the appraisal. Never would come back to me with a counteroffer. So I just kept on about my business. And in '98, this Dochev guy, he comes onto the property just south of me and puts up this big circus tent. And he starts bringing concrete down to build these sewer septic tanks and manholes, rings and different things that he's making. And, of course, I don't remember. He was driving right across my property because he had an easement, which was fine at the time. I didn't think it was going to be any big problem. But, he still hadn't made an offer on my property. Well, '99, I think it was, rolled around, and come to find out, he's going to try to buy the property next door to the west of me and has a contract on it to purchase it. It's 21 acres. Well, I find this out too late. First what happened was, how the heck, I'm not sure how this happened. If he actually had a contract to get this, yeah, he had a contract on it. But somehow, he ended up, he had to have bought it by this time. Anyway, I tried to buy the property out from under him because I didn't want no friggin' concrete plant next to me, especially upwind of me. I mean, I was going to be right in the dust tail of this whole operation, and that wasn't going to work. Well, that didn't happen. The guy didn't want it, and I started getting notices that they were going to rezone this property. And what happened? He started building. And he ended up putting in what he called a water storage tank and a well. And it's my understanding from a guy here in town named Kevin Fisher, that because Kevin was working for the guy who did the well and did the foundation on the building, that this Cody Gochef guy got fined for putting this well in, and I don't know, he was in trouble already. And it was kind of interesting. But I didn't know what was going on yet. But I started getting these.